Hey there, and welcome to the Reclamation Room. I'm Ashana, and I'm so glad you're here. This is a space for women reclaiming themselves after narcissistic abuse. If you've ever felt like you were too much, not enough, or both at the same time, you're in the right place. I created this podcast because I know what it's like to lose yourself in overgiving, overperforming, and still wondering why it never felt like love. I've walked through trauma, toxic relationships, and the long road of self-reclamation, and I'm here to walk with you. In this podcast, we'll explore what it means to come home to yourself after the confusion and chaos of narcissistic abuse. Some episodes will be solo, others will include guest interviews. All of them will be honest, grounded, and deeply compassionate. So, whether you're just realizing what you've lived through, or you've been on this path and you're ready for the next layer of your healing, you are welcome here. This is not about perfection. This is about reclamation.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part sometimes, is holding two truths. Like, that was really shitty and it was really painful. And then having that next statement be, and you're also here and you're also okay. And that's where you have to tell yourself, like, I'm with you. So,
For sure.
okay, I did have something come up for me when you shared that. I feel like what you just shared was extremely helpful. And a thought popped into my head of women saying, okay, well, now we have this man on the show and he's telling me, you can just do this, it'll be helpful.
Yeah.
And of course, there could be women who are like, okay, and who are you? Like, you're just another man, you're mansplaining things to me. And I think it's really important to kind of tap into here, like, I don't think you are here preying on women. I don't think you're here to be a dick. I don't think you're trying to mansplain to anyone. So what
Right.
is it in you that brought you through what you went through and brings you to this place of genuinely wanting to help others and genuinely, that humility and that, like, kindness and not trying to take advantage?
Yeah. One thing, this will run a little contrary to the things I've been saying about my maternal parent, but one thing that that woman instilled in me, I was raised by her as a single parent. I had no paternal influence. So a lot of that male bullshit is not on board. And I recognize that. And my perspective, my navigation of life experience as this particular man or male is tempered by that. She was a feminist. She was in her prime in the 70s when the
Mhm.
ERA was coming. I remember all of that. I remember her, the spirit of what that was at an early age. So again, for anything that may be disparaging that I'm saying about this person, that they had that on their side, that they were an empowered woman, and they didn't put up with any of that. Any of that nonsense. So that was imbued upon me. I can say that talks cheap, but the way I try to show it is, as you said, I don't ever want to come across as being dictatorial, prescriptive, as though I know anything. And so I'll reveal a card of mine that from my own life, the way I move through human experience and interaction with others is there's a term called apophasis, which it's a product of Christian theology in the scholastic period, I think like medieval Christian thinking, and it is to have a negative relationship with, in the case of Christianity, the epistemics of Christianity, to say they know what the God is that they worship, and that's cataphasis, to identify this as a man that lives in the sky and he's angry sometimes, and well, he had these covenants, and maybe he's not angry, so they think they know they're God's attorneys, they think know all these things. But the apophatic is like, I have no idea. I really have no idea what I'm engaged with. I only know when I'm in the presence of the divine, whatever that is. I choose not to identify it, but that I am with, and I'm putting a lot of words in their mouths, but this is
Yeah.
me. I take apophasis and I just say, I don't know shit. I don't know anything. What I can do though is that I can take someone else's idea, make a creole of it or synthesize it or make a tapestry, present it to you for your consumption, and you do with it what you will. So again,
Yeah.
nothing prescriptive, nothing dictatorial, nothing meant to have any kind of strong reified value that, like, do this. And but when I speak, it's in the spirit of apophasis, which is to say,
Mhm.
I'm ignorant. I really am ignorant. And there's another term called ignostic, which is to say I
Mhm.
have no clue, right?
Yeah.
So that's my spirit when I try to come into these conversations, is to say, this I heard from so and so, and I heard this from another person. and they really resonate with me and they make sense. And this is the result maybe that was garnered from that, and that was,
Hmm.
I extracted this value from that. And so I think if I keep it loosey-goosey like that and I don't try to hammer down any strong, this is the
Hmm.
list, this is your 5 bullet points for success. I offer that to the audience to say anything I say in this conversation or any other conversation where I'm entering in to good faith with you to speak, or
Yeah.
the audience to speak to things that are very valuable to me, precious
Yeah.
in terms of what we earned as people who suffered, that it's all said in that humility that, and I don't mean humility in an egoic sense. Humility means to ground, like it's
Yeah.
just to bring yourself in and say, this is something that helped me, and if it helps you, that's great. And I pass it along to you gingerly,
Yep.
respectfully, and do with it what you will. And some things are going to connect, and other things will, just let it go by, and it's fine.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's a good answer, but like I said, I think I try to check myself when it comes to these kind of conversations. That there. So we talk about maybe there being something sacred about the space that we're opening up, you and myself and the
Yeah.
audience. They're the third part. And so when we enter into sacred space, we don't fool around anymore, and we have reverence for the other. And so I have a secular kind of, well, it's not secular, that's a bad word, but a non like theistic kind of spiritual or
Right.
sacred. And that for
Yeah.
me is that there's one person in this audience, one woman or man in this audience can take away something that really helps them. That's that's sacred
That's
to me.
it.
So
That's
yeah,
it.
right.
Yeah.
And you as well. Like anything
Yep.
that you and I produce in this conversation, wow, that means a lot. Not to me personally, but just that fellow humans, fellow persons will take that away and move with it. So because it's happened to me. Again, 150 conversations, there have been
Yeah.
those sterling moments, these insight moments that are sacred, and they're very valuable. So
Yeah.
I offer that out. Like I said, anything I say is just to be considered and just work with it. And if it doesn't resonate, that's fine. That's totally cool.
Yeah, I like that. I do that in a lot of my coaching sessions. Like, well, here's what I picked up on just from when you were talking. If it's okay with you, I would love to share the feedback. If it resonates, great. If it doesn't, take it or leave it. But I
Yeah.
feel that honestly, it's not so much me coaching people in the sense of telling them, here's what you should do or here's how
Right.
to do it. It's more of holding space and you're actually talking yourself through this beautifully, but it's this, I guess, communion together. So I like
Yeah.
how you said that. And I found it really fascinating too. As you're talking, I'm like, it's really interesting that this tapestry of who you are, your story, has culminated in this sharer of stories. Isn't
Hmm.
that cool? It's become a part of, who you are showing up as in this world. And it's just like, here, if
Yeah.
you like it and if you don't, that's okay too.
Right, right. Because to show another card in my deck, I love philosophy. And the more I engage with philosophy, the more I realize how ignorant I am and how much I have to learn, but not learn in the sense that I'll ever arrive anywhere. Or so it's skepticism. And it's
Yeah.
a healthy, genuine, old style Greek skepticism where they say knowledge is impossible, but you kind of have to take that tongue in cheek. Like, obviously, I know not to walk in front of a dump truck doing 60 miles an hour. I know that, right? So we have certain things in our lives that we can reify and say, yes, I know that. But when it comes to the sacred space that we've opened in this conversation where vulnerable people, we have their attention.
Mhm.
And for me to say that I have any kind of knowledge to me is hubristic. It is mansplaining or person-splaining, or that to me isn't necessary. Little sprinkles of that might be okay. Like I'm pretty confident that this, has been subject to testability. It's testable. It's repeatable. Once in a while, you can throw an idea, like Frankel, like his
Yep.
work. So that's a good example. It's like I feel confident that that person spoke with authority to offer you a gem, a kernel of wisdom to take uh, freely. And so that's where again all the philosophers that I've racked my brain trying to understand the crazy stuff that they talk about, and have maybe a little coarse grain understanding of what they're doing is again to lead me to this wonderful revelation that I'm wonderfully ignorant and I'm wonderfully uh, 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 impoverished in an intellectual sense. And I don't mean to say that in a performative humility kind of way. It's just that feeds my hunger to continue to put things together and
Yeah.
understand and have ceaseless inquiry.
Allows you to open to more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because when you
And
think you know it all, like you stop looking.
right, right. Yeah, you get arrogant. You're like, you get this kind of, you get the pipe and you're, you know, I'm going to recite 50 quotes because I'm smart. It's like, who cares? Some of those quotes have value and you're cheapening that by, with the pipe or
Yeah. And I
whatever.
think this is important too because something that I've noticed in most recent years about myself, which has resonated with others when I've shared it, is that when we've been put down, when we've been criticized, when we've been dehumanized, any of the words would apply here. I tended to meet people who really seemed like they knew something. Like they
Mm,
really like had something figured out. And for the longest time, I was like, wow, this is an authority. I need to listen. This is someone who does have it figured out. And it
hmm
took me a long, 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 long time to realize, number one, some of those people are full of shit.
Yeah.
So, but number two, like that may be their final authority on it, but does that mean that it has to be yours? You have values too. You have an opinion
Yeah.
too. And so it closed me off for a long time because I was afraid of being wrong. And then I opened a little bit to, well, maybe there's not really a wrong way to do it. Maybe I just have to figure out my way to do it. And so
Yeah.
now my passion is telling everyone it's not wrong to be you, like figure out your way to do it. And I think that kind of goes in with what you're saying of not wanting to be the final authority on something and just sharing openly.
Right, right. And we talked in our pre-meet about going into those environments with the learned sage and the
Hmm.
archetype of the guru and things like that. And one of the things I take away from my personal experience with that is there is a famine out there for, again, meaning, sense, and purpose. So when you have a charismatic, maybe educated, maybe fluid with language kind of person that does
Convincing.
right, that sells a wonderful narrative to you and it just clicks, right? It answers questions and it
Yeah.
it gives you that reason to get up in the morning. But, a lot of times you have to be really careful with that because and not to toot the horn of apophasis and skepticism and ignorance and all that kind of stuff. We want to dance between things. We want to dance between
Mm.
surety and obscurity and ignorance and things like that. It's just like our personalities. We want to embody certain types of things as the situation arises.
Yeah.
And I think for our developmental practices and for our self development and awareness growth and knowing ourselves is that we can extract from people who are learned um, do a humility check. Like, are they charging $10,000 a week to go to a seminar where they're going to give you the seed of the Palladian Light Council or whatever the hell it is that they're there to do? You
Activate
know,
your light code.
right, and get that 13 strand crystallina. I know all that. I remember all that stuff. So think about that first, because to be grounded in just the mundane treachery of life, but nonetheless feeling complete and feeling whole and not starving for that answer
Yeah.
or that satisfaction that might come from a transcendent rhetoric or narrative or whatever it is. So there's ways to firewall your hunger and protect yourself from being drawn into that. And it's not just the self-help guru type thing. It's a lot of things that show up to us and it can be vague. Examples like, maybe diet culture or athletic
Mm.
culture, right? And you
Dating.
get these dating, right, relating to others. So
Yeah.
that so when you can develop um, and this is not my term, but it's an
Right.
ecology of practices. I got that from the Toronto Cogsci guy. An ecology of practices that gives you a very dynamic,
Hmm.
multipolar, like what are they, a Cartesian graph with all the all the lines that go
Yeah.
out. If that's you, rather than a straight line, a flat ontology of what you're doing, you are dynamic and you have
Yeah.
multiple angles that you can go out on. And these are just your ecology of wisdom practices. So again, qigong, or tai chi or Pilates or whatever it is that you're doing, but do it in a way that some of these red flags aren't showing up, that somebody is not selling you answers, that they're supporting you and they're saying very gingerly that, this is one thing you can do and make this your part of your ecology of your practices.
Yeah. If it feels right.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And you're getting results, right?
Yep.
So,
Yes.
maybe Qigong isn't doing it. You and I talked about that before in the pre-meet, and maybe this is a good time to interject that. Like women's self-care practices and everyone else, men, they're different. And
Yep.
so as a woman who's developing yourself out of someone who is struggling with esteem or depression or
Mhm.
anxiety or the ill effects of the tormentor or the abuser, be careful going into the arena of self-care, of mindfulness, of spirituality, because as you and I talked about, that woman who made an excellent point that when it comes to certain self-development practices, that there are things geared towards men that will be counterproductive for women. And there are things that women can do that would more resonate with their essence
Mhm.
and how they were brought up, how society helped mold them and all these different things. And so, those are caveats that are worth considering. So,
Yeah. And I think it's important too. This just popped into my head, but thinking about these gurus or these influencers or what have you, and how different practices will hit differently for women and for men. I hear suddenly men thinking they can explain to us how to do things and they don't even know what it is to be a woman,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
vice versa, of course.
right, right, right. But by and large, you get, a lot of men prescribing things and, coming at you with that energy. And to speak to the woman whose interview I can't find, she was basically saying that, men are raised, imprinted, introjected, whatever you want to call it, to be strong,
Mhm.
charismatic, and leadership
The
and,
conqueror.
right, and machismo and gusto and all this.
Yep.
And so when men enter into self-development, which they absolutely need to, it is about taking that down a few notches and being less that stupid alpha thing and
Mhm.
more go through sigma, but
Yep.
don't go, you don't have to go down to the basement, but go into this place where you can oscillate and you can be sigma alpha when, alpha when you need to, when the bear is attacking, but sigma when it's time to make good, sound, reasonable decisions, and maybe beta once in a while when you want to be a sensitive, loving, couch potato that's just crying at a rom-com,
And
whatever it is.
that's okay too.
Okay, I got a few rom-coms that I like, and they're both, so we can move, but that conditioning that brought us there, we have to de-escalate in a certain
Yep.
way. And when you prescribe that to a woman and tell her to bring herself down to a level
Yep.
where she's more in touch with her emotion. What the hell are you saying to a woman? A woman doesn't need to hear that. A woman might benefit better from a contemplative practice where she's thinking about empowerment and raising her chi up a little bit and maybe experiencing a taste of that Sigma Alpha female where she's
Yep.
like ballsy and, like feel that energy.
And
So yin and the yang.
validation.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm getting comical, but there's differences, and so when we can dial into that, and you can recognize the right coach, the right influencer, the right whoever who understands that and is integrated in that sense that it's like, man, things are not cut and dry. They're not that flat ontology, that flat
Yeah.
beingness.
Yeah. Because your
Things are
personality
so,
is like this too.
yes, for sure, for sure. So yeah, caveat to those who are. And you could be 20 years into a practice and think, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
no wonder I'm not getting a lot out of these programs. There's now not 20 years, but maybe 5 years in, and you're just like, what the hell is all bullshit?
I've
But
totally
maybe it's
outgrown this like 5 years
right.
ago.
Yeah, exactly. On and find that person who is connected in that sense that you're like, oh, I like this. This feels good, and you can move into it. So.
Yeah. Well, so you touched on the woman's journey of we tell people to bring themselves down and we tell them to dig into the depths and maybe just get more in touch with your emotions. So earlier you mentioned shame, and I know in our pre-meet we talked about unworthiness a little bit, and you had brought
Right.
up breaking the cycle of unworthiness. I'm wondering if you have anything to speak to on that.
Yeah, this is the book that I'm reading on narrative therapy can speak to that inner voice. We do have the inner dialogue. And
Mhm.
where is that sense of unworthiness coming from? Well, it was conditioned. There may be some inherent, we all have fingerprint personalities. There's the ocean scale that psychologists use and different, type of personality that we have. By and large, I think what we bring in our now moments are moving frame by frame into the future, that guilt shame can be an old narrative. It can be a conditioning that was foisted upon you by somebody. And I had some of that. I think, and I heard somebody say, I'm going to go on a weird tangent for a
Yeah.
second. Somebody made a good point that I was reading, and they said, shame is a kind of a narcissistic product, and guilt is more of a sense of unworthiness product, and that kind of is intuitive, right? It makes sense because the shame is you have something to lose by being
Hmm.
shamed, right?
Hmm.
And so you're on a pillar, you get knocked off the pillar. And when I
Yeah.
say narcissism, we're all on that spectrum.
Yep.
There's I'm old, so Warren Beatty was a good example when You're So Vain by Carly Simon. I think that
Hmm.
a lot of people say that she wrote that about him. But think of your class A grandiose narcissist, and then think of somebody who was a doormat, and has just, and I sorry to all doormats out there, but just has zero self-esteem, zero
Right.
self-preservation or ego or worth or anything like. So we're on that spectrum and we want to bring these people down. May not be possible, but these people can definitely elevate. And so the
Hmm.
guilt shame thing that's going on there is fixable. And I hate to use that word, but it's like this may not be fixable. This may be that. Now I've talked to people who have worked with narcs and worked with narcissism, and they said that there can be self-aware
Hmm.
narcissists, people who suddenly, oh, this
Yeah.
is me. I'm capable of this.
Yep.
So we have to grant that. But I think if we want to do repair to the low esteem, the guilt and the shame, there's good news. I think that is one thing that can be, with care and with the right people in the right situation, be brought forward. And I don't know if that satisfies the question, because where is that coming from again? And I think, again, let's talk about men and women. Let's generalize for a minute,
Yep.
outliers aside, that a lot more guilt and shame is foisted upon women. Think about women's bodies as they're developing. Think about the
Yeah.
puritanical origins of our country. It's like
Yeah.
there's wear the long cloak and and stay silent and don't you dare
Don't leave the
feel
kitchen.
right. Don't leave the kitchen, and God forbid you should feel anything erotic or anything pleasurable. So this is our legacy, right? And so
Yeah.
it's collective as well as familial. That our grandmother may have been imbued with that shame and that she passed it to her mother, but it may not be as much. And then the daughter may be under that pressure, but maybe not as much. Maybe they're breaking away from that generational inheritance. So we have to examine and be our own investigator and say,
Mm.
well, what is it? Is it generational? Is it cultural? Is it the pressure of, you can't wear a bikini or you can't feel good about yourself. You can't do these things. So, and again, this is a wall that I run into because you made a very good point earlier. All I can ever have is a priori knowledge of women. It's like I have never been a woman. And so I can only guess. So I'll say that, my speculation would be that we have to inquire into our own personal history and our own family history. My mother was very anally retentive in a sense, just very not prudish, but very Victorian, very not sexually liberated like a lot of her peers were in the 60s. She didn't fall into that as much as the feminism.
Yeah.
She was very 19th century about things, and just in hindsight I can see that. And she raised a boy, so it's my hormones overrode any kind of puritanical imprint. It's like, right, I don't think so. But had I been a girl or a woman, which she would remind me of all the time that she wished she had had a girl, um, that I can only imagine, that pressure and and again, shaming of the body, shaming of our sexual power,
Yeah.
shaming of authority, shaming of having a voice, and guilt that is the result of that shaming and things like that. So, yeah, I guess the best thing I could say is be a good investigator and have a team of investigators working with you, like you do, like talking to people and using the Socratic inquiry to open them
Yeah.
up and say, where is this coming from? Where is this coming from? And then also finishing, or not completing it, but just maybe working with that by saying that it's not written in stone and that you can, no matter your age, you can find that empowered aspect of yourself.
Is that what
That
worked for you with your shame?
I think,
I mean,
I think I
assuming,
was
of course, you still may face shame. So, not to say like yours is healed. How did you do it?
right. To be honest, I'm probably a very shameless person.
I'm
I,
here for it.
I'm a
Share
I'm
your
a
secrets.
guilt I'm a guilt person. Like, oh my God,
Mm,
I feel I it's almost paranoia. Like if I do something that I know, I didn't do right, or so in other words, it had a negative impact on somebody, I feel
yeah.
it. Shit.
Yep. I feel that.
And I think deep down I'm an empath, but I'm also kind of sociopathic on the top because I had to survive. And if I had been an empath going through my childhood, I would have died, and I certainly would have committed suicide at
Yeah.
15 or 15. So I had to harden up really, really hard and fast. But underneath is an empath, I think. And so the guilt shows up because
Yep.
I do understand that if I do something that negatively impacts somebody, I'm like, don't do that, you know? And what have you just, you know, that kind of thing. So I try to keep that
Yeah.
to a minimum. But I think in terms of shame, I'm trying to think of an instance where I've had, you know, I've embarrassed myself and I've done stupid things. So I guess that qualifies to some extent, so that you can be aware enough that you say, oh shit, that was a faux pas. What did I just do? You know, I just
Yeah.
made an ass out of myself, and everybody else is very uncomfortable about it. You know, and yeah, so I have those. It's there. Yeah. And now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, it's there. But I guess the way to do that is to be forgiving of self and to say that the all the frames of the movie that is Justin, you know, frame by frame,
Yep.
you know, that they have no responsibility in this moment for that. That you, if you're learning from it and you're not going to repeat it and be that ignoramus or be the insensitive, that it's okay, let it rest.
Or
But
at least be
that's,
working towards progress. You know, you may do it again, but like you're aware of it now. And so
yeah,
break the habit.
right, right. And
Yeah.
don't be a perfectionist about it, right? I think that's a good
Mm,
point. You know, be moderate and just say,
yeah.
because I'll still make an ass of myself before I go to my grave. You know, it's like I just know I'll say something stupid. But
Yep.
it's a learning moment, right? And then you can add that to the repertoire of learning moments that you have. So yeah, good point. It's again granting ourselves that messiness and that sloppiness that we can do that. And I think that might apply to shame and guilt, you know,
Yeah.
that you do so. And again, if you're feeling shame, and it's not pathological, like you're chronically shamed and you're just constantly, you know, that if you just have those moments, then analyze it and say, okay, you know, like we were just saying, you know, why do I feel that, and why am I reacting to that? You know, is my reputation at stake for being a not ignoramus, or being, you know, a sensitive person who didn't, you know, say something stupid in front of a group of
Yeah.
people? So yeah, just analyze it in a healthy way so that you're not
Yep.
taking yourself apart. But yeah, and that might alleviate the guilt of the future, where you look back and you go, oh my God, I can't believe I did that last week, you know, and that's the guilt, you know, you're just like, oh, because you're doing the calculus. You're saying these people were hurt by what you did, you know.
Yep.
And so anyway, so yeah, if that's something.
Yeah, I liked how you said, why did I feel that way? Or why do I feel this way? And then you said, why am I reacting to it? Two very
Mm-hmm,
different questions. And I think that second one is one that I don't think people are probably asking themselves at first, you know, until they
mm-hmm.
do. And then it's like, oh, wow, this opens up a whole new vista over here.
Yeah.
But why am I reacting to this? Because sometimes it is okay to just feel it and it's okay.
Hmm. And what a gift to be able to react to it, other contrary to being oblivious, right? So
Yeah.
we've come across people who are just offense machines, and they just say stupid things and they bulldoze their way through things, and they'll never, I don't think, have that capacity unless they go to, you know, have an intervention or something to realize the train wrecks that they're leaving behind them. Or, you know, I mean, as serious as a train wreck, but just the faux pas and the gaffes and the kerfluffles
Yeah.
and all the little flaps that we might create by that insensitive behavior, or bellicosity or arrogance, or, you know, all the negative
Or
things
just
that we can
trying
come,
to avoid pain constantly.
right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's a whole thing there, where subconsciously somebody is being obnoxious or off-putting as a defensive mechanism to, you know, I don't want intimacy. I don't want
Yep.
close contact with somebody where I have to be vulnerable and I have to show, because there's guilt and shame right there. Like, God forbid anybody see my warts or my flaws, or, you know, all the things. And so
Yeah.
it's complex.
Isn't everything?
I love it. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's part of the fun of life, when you can
Yeah.
not take yourself so seriously, and know that it's there's not going to be a grade at the end of this. You know, you're not going to get an A or a B or a C or an F or anything like that. You know, it's just you do you, and learn that you know, again, being a vulnerable person, being a person who can make mistakes, it's okay. You know, I'll just keep
Yeah.
hammering that. You know, it's like,
And each person is here to have their tapestry, to have their pretty colors of everything behind them, coloring what they've done, and then look forward to the future. Like, what new colors can you bring in? And all these blends. And I think that's what I'm so passionate about, is just reminding people, yeah, you've been through some really hard shit. And I don't think many people have told you just how precious you are for being here. and how
Mm,
important you are and how appreciated you are. I'll tell you that. I'll be that person because every person I talk to is so fascinating.
yeah. Yeah, the stories they bring, right?
Yeah.
So if they have to start at the ground floor, just say, wow, you may not think you're worth anything. You have like no self-esteem, or you're really deeply mired in existential vacuum. But really,
Yeah.
like you said, you told me some amazing stories, and what a gift. And so take that as your first little step to elevate yourself up, is that you have stories to tell, and they will help other people.
Yes.
No matter how
And thank you for
inconsequential.
sharing that.
Yeah, yeah. So I agree. I agree. There is no one of no consequence in this world. I love to use an analogy of us being cells in a body. The
Mm,
8 billion of us, or whatever we are, 8.5 billion people, and we
yeah.
are cells in a body, or we are occupants of this planet. And how our neighboring cells behave and how they metabolize and how they function has a direct impact on us. So we're getting a little Buddhist here for a minute, but that's a good metaphor for if you think you have no value and no worth and all these other things, you're surrounded by other cells that are exactly like you physiologically, more or less, if you'll grant me that. But
Yeah.
that your story and your narrative and what you contribute to the body human is not for naught. It is for something.
Yeah.
Because and when you can find your voice and share that, you'll connect with other people as cells are connected. All of our
Yeah.
tissues are connected and so forth. So milk that analogy, but yeah, it's a way to realize, uh, as the Buddhists would say, the interdependence, socially.
Yep. And if someone's in a low and they can't see, well,
Mm,
what purpose is my cell serving right now? I kind of feel like a POS right now. It's easy to feel that way because I've felt that way. And sometimes it's a little bit harder to look outside of that. And just a reminder here that there are other cells around you and they're not all awful. Not everyone
hmm
is going to hurt you. So sometimes it's just opening to the idea of, hey, maybe I can just go see what some of these other cells have to say and
hmm
just kind of get out of that perspective a little bit. And I might feel a little bit better.
Yeah, yeah. That's the power, I think, of group connection. And
Mhm.
that's one thing that most of us, outliers aside, most of us are good at is when we find ourselves in a safe space with the appropriate number of people that you can open up, kind of like you and I are doing in this conversation, you can open up a space where really incredible things can happen. And you could show up as that person who feels they are not worthy. They feel as though they are, a wretch and that, they have nothing to offer. But when you're in that safe space with let's say half a dozen people, and they're being vulnerable and they're sharing
Mhm.
their shadowy things, and then you're like,
Hey, wait.
I'm not the freak I thought I was. I'm with my people now. Like, yay. And then suddenly you're not Hashimoto anymore, or whatever the hunchback
Yeah.
was. You're like, oh, I can be my butterfly self, and
I'm a
woo,
beautiful little butterfly.
I'm doing this now, as opposed to
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
I'll be in the corner if you need me. No, come over here. We're all
Don't
showing
look
our
at me.
uglies. Yeah, we're all being ugly together, and
Uh,
we're putting the ugly in the room. And I don't mean negative ugly, but just like what we think we are, not being, as not being the beautiful human beings that we are.
yeah,
There's a way. So this is all being said that there is a way to open that part of yourself up and
absolutely.
yeah and find it now. Finding a group could be a challenge, so this isn't all sugar and light, but if there isn't a group, start one. Have the audacity to start one and say, hi, I'm more or less introverted, and I have low self-esteem, but I want to get with other people who are like that, and we can turn the lights out for the first couple of meetings. We'll light one candle in the middle of the table so we don't really see each other. Whatever it takes, just get that ball rolling, and you'll never know. Like I was listening, the anniversary for Alcoholics Anonymous was a few weeks ago, and the two guys in the 20s or 30s that started it.
Hmm.
Um, there's an interesting story about how just two guys got this thing going. And I'm not advocating for AA, and I'm not
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
it's something you shouldn't explore, but just the provenance story was being aired on a radio program as I was driving around for my job. And I thought, wow, these guys were just bottom, like hardcore substance dependence with alcohol, and but their tenacity and their will to transcend, and they used divine language, and they borrowed from wisdom traditions to
Mhm.
undergird what they were doing. And I thought, man, that's how you start. And it's, again, I'm not advocating for
Yeah.
AA in this sense, but it's a provenance story. It's a beginning story about something small with two seemingly insignificant, written off by society, frickin' alcoholic,
Yep.
and they came out of it. And there are millions and millions of people whose lives were affected by that. And I would say overall, it has done a lot of good for a lot of people. So you just never know. Two people
Yeah.
in
Yep.
1930, I think, I don't remember, sorry. But yeah, just when it started and where it ended up. So don't ever dismiss your capacity to be a catalyst. And that alchemist that I talk about, that person that can make that change.
Yes. I love that. Okay, well, before we wrap it up, is there anything else that we didn't cover that maybe you would like to speak on, or anything you would like to share about your own work?
Hmm. Maybe I'll reiterate a couple of things that we covered. And if anybody, I'll give you a link for the YouTube, my channel. If anybody has an interest in asking a question about anything that came from this, you can write a comment in one of my interviews and I'll respond to it and maybe we can talk on the side or whatever. So I'll say that if there's anybody who wants to, and it could even be, criticism. You can criticize something I've said, and that's good because then I'll learn. So, if you've got that too, just make it nice and constructive. But yeah, just any commentary, you're welcome to go onto my YouTube thing and comment and connect with me, get my attention. But I guess I would say I would want to probably address the person who is struggling right now and just look at what, we all have faced. And as we've said in this conversation, that there are solutions and there are methods and practices. And by solution, it's not an end game. It's just that the solution leads to another solution, leads to another solution. It's so solution is soluble. It is solvable, right? It's not to say that it is the solution. It is just that you're, looking for the solubility of a seemingly insoluble, abusing this word here, but the seemingly insoluble problem that you feel like you're confronting, which is, shadow and whatever it is, depression, anger, all these different things that could be vexing you at the moment, is to say that there is a way. And if I know you, I don't want to speak for you, but I know for myself that if I can extricate myself and that if I can pull myself out of the fire and come out of it with a love for life and a passion for being connected and a passion for wanting to see others, do well and find a state of well-being, that would be one thing I would like to leave with the audience is no matter where you think you are, it's not impossible. There's a
Yeah.
there's a way to it's going to take time, it's going to take patience. We live in an instant gratification world where everything is, you can get anything you can live on your couch for the rest of your life. Everything can be delivered to you, instant gratification, yada, yada, yada. And then I guess the last thing I would say on top of that, and we talked about this in the pre-meet, is rather than seeking happiness, I think it's highly overrated. It's allowed to come in naturally when it does, but think about well-being and think about the placid of that flat line of well-being,
Mhm.
and allow happiness to come and go, allow sadness to come and go. But you're in that straight line there. So you've
Yep.
got your oscillatory, your sine wave can do this with happiness and sadness, but consider yourself to be aspiring to be in this straight line of
Yep.
just unflappable well-being. And it's boring and at first, but when you get through the boring, like, so in other words, if you're on the hedonic roller coaster on the sine wave and you're
Yeah.
happy sad, trough peak, um, it'll seem boring at first, but boy, I tell you what, it's so talk to somebody who's recovered from alcoholism, like there's no life without alcohol, and then they get into sobriety and they're like,
Yep.
I love life, man. I like walking in the woods. I like, reading. All these things are suddenly wonderful again, whereas before they're like, yeah, yay, booze. And so that's kind of an analogy maybe to that, is just that flat line of well-being and just being content and sated.
Yep.
And I love this word, satisficient. It's
Mm.
satisfying and it's sufficient is a is a goal that you could set for yourself. It's not for everyone, but
Yep.
I think if you're tired of this,
Hmm.
which this is fun, but this is not fun. But when you're in those spaces, consider that and give that a thought. And then that'll be my parting word.
I feel like that's
Yeah.
the space where you can just, everything can be happening around you and you're like, I'm okay.
Right. Grace
You
in the
know?
storm, as I say. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, yeah. Or you can watch a bunch of crazy people try to get their dopamine out. Like I saw something today that was absolutely mind-blowing. Right before we got on the call together in Alaska for the 4th of July, they drive cars off a cliff for entertainment. And it it's it's I kind of get it. There's a little
I
piece of
mean,
me
I
that's in
get
there.
it. I will not be doing it.
No, and the people were so perilously close to there's a 200-foot cliff and then the car comes down and people they were tired. And I'm like, my God, but they're getting that
Yeah.
yeah, and then they go do fireworks and so I'm being silly trying to and I'm a comedian. That's one of my
Yeah.
coping mechanisms. I love to be a clown. But that just I was amazed. I was just mesmerized for 20 minutes as cars kept flying off the cliff. And they were all made up to be silly. They had like one of them looked like a pig. It had a pig face and ears on it, and they whoop,
Wow.
off the cliff it went. And interesting, but they were having fun and they were getting away from their normal life and they were escaping for a moment,
Yeah.
which is good, so there's nothing wrong with that. But also consider the oscillation and the fluidity of we do the hedonic thing once in a while, but we can also do this steady state, where it's just and if I were to suggest that something in life is very rewarding, I would say that flat line is so amazing and so wonderful to have as part of your sense, meaning, purpose apparatus in life is that it's grounded in that kind of I'm not seeking excitement and I am capable of having the wherewithal to take the troughs when they happen, that I recover much faster that way. So anyway,
Right.
a little preachy, but that would be uh,
No.
an opportunity, right? A door open to say, give it a shot, see what you think. So,
Yeah, no, I like that. And I like too, I like the flatline concept. A little thing that stood out to me there is that it's stability. You know that even if you have the highs and the lows, that flat line is still there and you know where you're coming back to. So I think
yeah,
that's really powerful.
yeah, you recenter more quickly as opposed to always wanting to be at the peak of the wave. That's your aspiration. If you can aspire to be in the constant that's not oscillating,
And
it's
there's
it's
like
a
the
thought.
neurochemical aspect of all of that too, which I think could be another fascinating discussion. But I think
Mm.
for now, just the visual and the metaphor could be helpful to people.
Yes, yes. Again, a lot of things I try to say is like, are you starting from square one or your first step? So these are little things I throw out there
Yeah.
that as I've said throughout this conversation, I'm not good at it, but I like it. Right? I always joke it's like there was in the 70s when I was a kid, there was the hair club for men, and there was a guy, and it was like basically toupees, and in the ad he's like, I'm not just the president, I'm a member, and he pulls his toupee off, right? That's us when we're learning how to, better ourselves. It's like, yeah, we're all in
Yeah.
the hair club for, this is a man thing, but
Yeah.
yeah, that revelation was a self-deprecating act, and it was like, wow, I can relate to this person, even though you could kind
Yeah.
of tell it was a toupee. But anyway, the humor there and that playfulness and the
Yeah.
imagination,
Yep.
that it took to do that. So one
Yeah.
last little nugget there.
I love that. I love that. And
Yeah.
I've enjoyed having you on. I think that
Mm,
I hope our viewers, our listeners, find this meaningful, find this entertaining, find this insightful, whatever you find it in whatever way you find it. I hope that you do. I'm grateful that you do, speaking to our
mm.
listeners here. And I'm going to list Justin's podcast information and YouTube information in the show notes, as well as any other relevant information. I guess maybe an email. Maybe they can reach.
Um, Yeah, yeah, I'm game for that because I don't really get a lot of emails. So, yeah, if somebody has a question, or again,
Try something new.
healthy criticism or whatever, that's
Yeah.
great. So yeah, that would be fine. And check out, and I don't make any money from this, so check out my show because, like I said, I would say out of 150 interviews, 100 of them are women, so maybe two-thirds. I'll have to count. I did count one time, but I'll have to count again. And it's not to
Yeah.
brag; it's just to say that that's a resource that's
Yep.
available. That these women were uh, kind enough to come on my show and share space with me like you and I did. And you're coming on my show too. I guess we can reveal that. I want to
Yeah.
have you as a guest and we'll have another conversation. So you'll be one of my women guests. And as I said earlier to the women in the audience, I want to thank you as well as Ashana for allowing me in this space as a man to speak. That is, again, I take that seriously. It's a sacred space that's been opened, and I hope I did it some justice by just trying to be down to earth and not too flappy. I don't
I
mind
think that
talking,
Flappy
but
Flappy was okay. I like it.
hopefully it was good flappy.
I think you have some good hidden gems in there. We'll see what they think.
And the great thing is they're not mine. I just take them and move them forward from other people with maybe a little, a little added spice or something to it for me. Yeah,
Shake your tapestry.
right,
And here
right,
you'll
yeah.
see.
That's it. This is so and so, and this is so and so. But
Yeah.
I put that tapestry together. And
Yes.
if it's beautiful to you, then my work was well worth it.
If you
Well
don't
worth
like
it.
it, don't look at me.
Yeah, all right. Go to the next exhibit at the gallery. Mine didn't work, so that's fine. Because we are so unique, and I don't want to resonate with everybody. I don't want to connect with everybody, right? I'm not meant for a lot of people, but there are people who will listen and go, "Hey, that's great. That's insightful," and I'm gonna go check out whom he recommended, where he got that information from, because then I can just, wick it up even more. That's
Yep.
what it's about. That's what it's about. So,
I agree.
and I want to thank you too for having me as a guest. I appreciate it.
Yeah. No, thank you. This has been great.
Thanks for spending time in the Reclamation Room. Be sure to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if this supported you, consider sharing it or leaving a review. You're not alone, and your reclamation is sacred.